Shalom, shalom, family. Just doing a quick random live just to talk about some random things. As I think, we've been talking a lot about a lot of deep things lately. I usually don't go live at this time because the kids be up. So you might hear them in the background. But I want to talk about some things real fast. As we had touched on a couple different things as doing these synthetic Sundays. Just go to a list and whatnot. Close that. So on the playlist on Synthetic Sunday, obviously we went over a lot of different things. Um, see what's up with that. While it's doing that, let it show what it's doing. I just apologize for that. It's like froze real fast on me. I'm gonna have to reset. I'm gonna reset or close this at least. All right, I'm just doing some audio testing real fast too. I'm trying to use these see how these headphones sound. But I came live today too to possibly have a holy conversation on the stuff we've been studying as we've been studying a few different things. All right, history, genetics, and everything. Let's see. All right. Just seeing how this thing sounds. Just gotta wait to it. Okay. I don't know why I didn't click that in the first place. All right. Once I connect this thing, Then we're gonna have a talk about what we've been touching on. Somebody just named a thing ridiculous. And that's something. Neighbors choose a ridiculous name for their TV. It's quite interesting. Let me turn this off and back on. All right. Just doing a sound check once I get this thing back on. All right, let's try to connect this. All right. Let's see if this will connect. And then what we're gonna have a quick, free conversation on is just some of the stuff that we're finding nowadays, like the history and genetics and stuff, and how we can understand genetics. I'm pretty sure we don't need to explain how we can understand history, but all right, let me see how this sounds. I'm just checking to see things sounds as I never checked the headphone sound on this. I'm gonna listen real fast. I'm just checking to see things sounds as I never checked the headphone sound on this. Okay, it don't sound too bad. All right, so now let's talk about something real fast when it comes to genetics. Now you don't have to be a geneticist to understand genetics. Is that's a fallacy that I see some people say, like you need to be a geneticist to understand genetics. Now you need to know a little bit about genetics. You need to study a little bit on it to understand genetics, but you don't need to know genetics to know how to read the answers on given in genetics. For example, a report card. Let's look at a report card. Here's an example of a report card, right? You've been at school before. You probably got a report card, had to give it to your parents and everything, right? Now, what should your parents know about a report card? They should know what it means, right? What does these letters mean, right? If I don't know what these letters mean, what does it mean for me to have this report card? Right? Let's say I'm a foreigner and my kid's going to school and I get this report card and he says, everything on here is fine. Is everything on here fine? Or is there something that's wrong on this report card? There's an F right there. Now, how they get an F in gym, I don't know, but that's really bad. You see what now? Obviously, A is the best, right? B, and then you got to note what the minuses is, plus and minus, right? That means lower than an A, right? A plus means perfect, right? B plus means a high B, right? And then you know the percentages, right? 90%, 80%, 70%, right? 70% is a C, right? Report cards, you got to know a little bit about the letters. And the easy thing about a report card is not that many letters. It's not that many letters in genetics either, which is also important to know when noting these things. And the reason why it's important because we know that the world itself used to live on basing people off of pigmentation. That's not how you base people. In fact, that's how a lot of the camps, which I highly despise, like Sakari and stuff like that, base their maps off of. They base their maps off of basically looks, which are hysterically ridiculous. Doesn't make any sense at all in the sense of imagination. But there are some people that go for those things and believe that you can judge someone by the way they look and know who they actually are inside. We know that's not true. We know that is a doctrine that actually came from the Germatics. That's actually something that came early on while they was trying to make their science, right? That's very important, right? You probably know about it, right? What's his name? Darwin and all those things when they was trying to say, you know, what's that one? Um, let's go to a picture here to get understanding on there. Let's see one. I want to find. I forget the exact one. Not Origins of Man. You can see a little idea on some of these things. I'll try to see if there's a better one. You probably know about it, right? Where they talk about the human race and everything. I don't know if I can find one. In fact, I think it's a different character. Let me think about who that character is because I keep forgetting these atheist scientists. If you remember Origin of Races, let me think about his name real fast. I think it's Darwin, or it might be someone else. Of races. Here's a little idea, but it's one that's older than this. It's like a real picture, like this right here. Right? This is bogus. This is just ridiculous, right? The reason why is because actually a lot of them are highly related. Like this one, and this one, and this one would be related. Now, I already did a live on the people in Australia, right off the island coast. A lot of them actually have European haplotypes. And we had talked about that before, how they have European haplotypes. But obviously, knowing these letters helps a lot, right? Let me actually see if that thing downloaded. So that's why we study it. We actually study this because I think that the world has been ignorant for a long time, and not knowing this stuff can be really bad for you. So here's a genetic report. I'm going to go down to these right here. So obviously, a report card. You can understand a report card by knowing these letters, right? You know how many letters there are in a report card if you're familiar with it: A, B, C, D, F, right? There's no E unless you know some places, and some places got an S, right? Some places got an S. You see that when they say S on the test, where that's like superior. But here you have about 20 haplotypes, right? Haplogroups. Now, obviously, there's different ones for the female, right? Here's the ones for the female with your L's and everything, and your U's. Those are going to be for your female. But for your male, you're going to have about 20. And each one has basically is always determined by one person. Now, the reason why I also look at this is because I think it's ridiculous how. Now, let's look at Africa. I always wanted to do this. Let's go into Africa. If you type, I'm just going to put, let's go put that. Because some reason I just be careful when looking up Africa and stuff because they treat Africans like they're not people and um, don't give them dignity. So right here is so Africa. You'll say, "Oh, everyone's African, African, African. Everyone's African," but when you think about haplogroups, that's when the complexity of peoples come out. Haplogrouping. It let us know who we are as a people. Like for example, Africa is a diverse place. You got E1B1Bs, E1B1As. Let's see if I could just grab a example. Right, you got A's, you got different lineages. I'm just gonna grab a quick example if I could find one. If not, I'll use something else, or I'll just do it like this because usually, let's see, this was okay. Uh, these don't have everything done. This one. Obviously, you got to know that a lot of these settings, right? A lot of these things that's already set is on a bias, right? You see how many groups are in Africa? You see that R lineage? Where else do we see that R1B? Up there, all the way in the north. So you got R1B all the way in the north, all the way over here in England. See what's going on in these little areas over here? R1B is in Africa, and a large portion. A large portion. They're called the Chadic people. Guess what they look like? We'll go to that. Chadic. Chad. I think I spelled that wrong. Chadic. I'm gonna put it right here. So here's the Chadic people. You see them right here. So the Chadic people, they look dark skinned, but they have an R group, R1B V88. So it's really interesting when you take that in and note that obviously we know haplogroups aren't determined by genetics, and that's why we look at this. So A's, B's, right? There's B's there, B1. There's E's down there. There's R's. There's more. There's much more. This picture is just showing a little bit there. Now let's look at what's interesting is this area, right? We had did a live on the people in the area over here, right? We talked about the people in Oceania, right? Let's look at their haplogroups. And a lot of them have darker skin, right? A lot of people in the area over there have darker skin, but they are going to be, in a sense, different haplogroups. I'm gonna type it down. Let's go to over here. I think this is an example. Yeah, so look at you can see these different areas over here. I'm going to show you what they look like. But you can see they have C's, right? They have different haplotypes, they have O's, they have R's. You have different ones like that. And the way they look, right? Let's go to let me look up one. I have to type it on my phone first so that it's safe and whatnot. All right. Let me show you who's over there in the Australia Islands. Just making sure it's scrolling. Okay. I'm going to show you what they look like. Here's the people on the Australian islands. So you can see what they look like. They're dark skinned. But what's interesting is, though they're dark skinned people, a lot of them actually have European haplotypes. A lot of them have European haplotypes. So it's just an example of the people in Australia. You can see darker skin tones, right? And that's what we've seen in Africa, different groups. And that's why I say it's important to know your report card. You gotta know your report card. If you wanna look at genetics, just know the report card. Now, obviously, understanding genetics, yeah, the scriptures, Messiah is over all those things. But for when people run around and say that they are bloodline such and such and such and such, and we got something like, for example, I hear a lot of people say it doesn't matter because everyone's mixed. That's not true. That's absolutely false. The truth is, when you look at haplogroups, especially Y haplogroups and MT haplogroups, they are unchanged. From mother to mother, it always is the same. From generation to generation, you can go 100 generations down and it'll be the same. You can go all the way to its root and it'll be the same. That's the same thing for the male. It's always father to father, all the way down. That's the thing about real genetics. Now, you got to be careful when looking at stuff like autosomal. Now, I can show you a video that lets you know autosomal tests are not reliable on telling you who you are. Autosomal tests do not test who you are. Rather, they test the same things as in everyone. A lot of those pretty much autosomals, your chromosomes, the other ones, not the Y chromosome, not your sex chromosomes that determines who you are. But rather, this is going to determine who you are. This is actually very important because when looking at who you are, that's important because it's no longer just marking people as African or marking people as European. Because then you can have someone, like, for example, I've been showing that there's a lot of A haplogroups in Europe, right? In fact, let me show you something. In fact, the L lineage, a lot of people mark that people with L lineage as always being dark skinned. But let me show you something. Let me show you something if I can find it on Facebook. So there's a club that they have on Facebook. And what's interesting is you can see a lot of people who come and say, I got L haplogroups and I got this and that. And you can find people who are European that well look European in the sense of looking European. I'm gonna see if I can find one on here. You see, well, this one can't really see. This one probably lighter skin. Yeah, this one's lighter skin. Let's go over here. I'll show you an example. You can, they got munchkins over here. Let's see. Now, obviously, this is not common. It's basically something that doesn't usually happen, but it can happen, right? Because mixing happens, right? That's something that happens. Let me see if I can find one. Sometimes they add a lot of different stuff. I'm not sure what this person looks like. They look like that. Let's go see another one. L3, right? They say it's native to Africa. Let's see if I can find one. I'm gonna show you. We'll find one of these people. Going down. Obviously, you're gonna have people in the areas of Africa with that, but you gotta know why, how they get there and everything. And that's when history comes into play, right? History comes into play for these things. I was looking here. I don't really see it on this one, but I do have a screenshot of them, and maybe I'll post that the screenshot. Put your camera. The munchkins running around. Let me see. All right. If you never seen one of these like little grouping things like this, it's really interesting. People post their results and stuff, and they share. They come together and be like, "Oh, we're related," because they are. They are related, though some may look different. Let's see. This one don't. I don't think this one has it. I'm gonna just post it because I already have a picture of it. I'm just gonna put it on the Discord. Let me just see where it is real fast and put it there. Because I think this type of things are interesting. I think it's interesting how complex the Most High actually made everything. That he didn't just make it black and white. He didn't just make everything black and white, but he made it more complex. Let me just see. Where is that post? Try to find it real fast and post it on this thing. And I'm going to show you. There's a couple to find while I'm looking at the same time. Let me see if I can find one right here. Just gonna scroll till I see it real fast. This might be it. Just looking on the phone to see if I have that one. So I can just post it real fast. Oh, so it wants me to sign in. I don't have a Facebook. I just don't have one. Let's see. I'm just gonna look on my screenshot so I can grab it. All right, I found it. Now let me put it on this thing. I'm just gonna close these and this one. All right. So, L3, right? It's gonna be, they say it's in Africa and everything, right? Let's go to something. I'm gonna show you a picture on those Facebook things and whatnot. You can find a couple different people like this, but I'm gonna show you an example. All right. Right here. All right. So look what you see right here. So this person name is Sonia Lynn Walker. There's her. There's actually she's talking about both of them. There's here right there. These two people, obviously, they're doing an error right there. I don't know if you already know what's going on in this picture. But what's interesting here is that she's talking to someone else who's also L3, and she says, "Here we are." She just talks about this thing. It says, but did we know that we're both L3E 3B? Turns out I'm actually L3E. You see what's going on there? And they look like this. So that's one of those things, like someone can be E1 B1A and be light skinned. They can be mixed, right? Their mtDNA can be like J or something like that, U5 or something, and they themselves can look Caucasian. They can look Caucasian, but they have a different haplotype because pigmentation doesn't make race. You see what's going on there? So that's why we look at these things. L3, right? If you look up L3, where does it say it come from? It'll say Africa. But we know if you dig deeper, that's why you have to dig. When you look for sources, don't just look for Wiki sources. You got to dig deep. Wikipedia is a great place to start because you got sources connected to Wikipedia. You got to look at those sources and actually read the real source. That's how you get the real answer to those things. Because we know, I'm going to show you something now. We actually know, guess what? Technically, these are Israelites. How do we know? Because I already talked about how L3 is Israel. But let me show you something also. L3 has a back migration. Let me show you something. L3 is not native to Africa. We know that by multiple different pieces of information. There's also another piece of information that I realized that I had that talked about L3 that I want to talk about. Let me just go down to that on one of these PDFs. As I do believe, citing sources. All right. So here's a PDF. You can see right here, this is a real PDF, just so you see that, right? Account right here, you see what's going on there? It's going to be obviously studying genetics and everything. This is going to be on an account of obviously people looking at the idea of the out of Africa idea, which this whole thing basically illustrates with multiple different geneticists. They have no proof. There's not enough proof for the out of Africa idea, right? Let me just show you something here. Let me see, where's the right here. All right, let me show you something. Here's what it says about L3. He says all other haplogroups are believed to descend from haplogroup L3. When he says all other haplogroups, meaning all MT, right? He's saying that they now you probably seen that before. Everyone tries to say that. They say out of Africa, L3 is out of Africa, and everyone the letters M and N descended from L3. But watch what it says here. So it says all other haplogroups are believed to descend from haplogroup L3 with an age of about 60 to 70 KYA, right? 70,000 years ago. Watch what it says right here. That is approximately the same as that of Y chromosome BT haplogroup. You see what it's saying there? It's letting us know because BT actually is not African. The BT haplogroup is actually not African. I can show you on this list as well that the BT is all found outside of Africa. It says, therefore, it is quite plausible that haplogroup L3 did not come out of Africa. It's quite plausible that haplogroup L3 did not come out of Africa, but migrated into Africa along with bearers of Y chromosome haplogroup BT or B. But we know more detailedly what it came from. They came from haplogroup E because we have multiple quotes of that. For example, over here, we got multiple quotes which are updated, right? It came out a little bit after this paper came out. Just talks about L3. Remember, we looked at that 60 to 70,000 years ago, but we got one 125,000 years ago. Obviously, these dates are extremely exaggerated, but it's just letting us know that one is older. And in fact, it's completely confirmed by fossils. Genetics, true locations of genetics is done by fossils. If a body dies in a place, that means they were there. That means they were there. And for example, L3 is found in Syria, right above Syria, right here, consistent with fossil records. We have dated around such and such, right? And they let us know that this one, long story short, is L3 matured in Eurasia. and return to Africa, whatnot, right? That's important to know, right? This is why sources, deep sources, is very important to read exactly what's written right from the actual report. That's important to understand. Otherwise, we'll be running in circles and you'll never have a pure answer. So that's why it's important to know that. So L3 actually is not native to Africa. That's important. L3 is not native to Africa. In fact, this whole note talks about that whole thing, how they know that the lineages that are supposed out of Africa are not actually out of Africa. Throughout this whole list. For example, let me see if I can find one more place. There's a really interesting one where it basically just has a talk of how all the geneticists. In fact, let's go to this one because they talk about how they bend data, right? Watch what it says right here. So remember, same place with the geneticists talking about this. Watch what he say. Apparently, they were too much focusing at bending the data to fit out of Africa because that's what people want. They want every dark-skinned person to be African. Is every dark-skinned person African? No. There's also a group. I don't know if I can find them. I gotta think about what's their name. Um, there's also other groups that are dark-skinned that have the D haplogroup. Such as I gotta think about what is their name. There's an interesting group, a very interesting one that has a D haplogroup that are very dark. I'm talking very, very dark people, and I gotta think about how you say their name because they have a certain name. I gotta think about how their name is. I'm just looking on this thing so I can grab them real fast. Just looking here, taking a look. All right, just gotta switch over real fast. I gotta think about their name because the interesting thing about peoples is their names. Different peoples, even with their names, they have different things going on with them. A lot of different things going on with different peoples. I'm just seeing here if I can find it. If not, I'll look for another name and put their name down. But they're a people, right? You can find it. Haplogroup D has people because I hear, obviously haplogroup D is Japanese. They're not only the Japanese. That's important to understand. There's all types of people with haplogroup D that's dark skinned. There's people with haplogroup J that's dark skinned. For example, we already looked at the people in Sidon and Tyra that moved into that area. We know that they're dark skinned. We know that their pigmentation is actually darker skin. We know that for sure. We also have examples of I haplogroups. I being dark skin. Dark skin isn't assigned to one people. Dark skin is just something that happens. It's pigmentation. That's something that we see. But as I've shown you, there's people who can be one haplotype but still be another haplotype. The reason why it is also important because a lot of stuff like the 12 tribes charts that a lot of camps were coming out with, that's just ridiculous and things of that sort that we have to stop. If someone wants to really understand who is Israel or who is who, they have to take the time out and study these things. They have to. Otherwise, they have to just be quiet and just pay attention. That's all they have to do. Is just be quiet and pay attention. Because once you start thinking you know this stuff, you might actually be surprised how deep it actually goes. And that's what this is. Just by obviously learning the letters, you learn these little things right there. Right? What's higher, right? Is B plus higher than B? Right? Yeah, B plus is higher than B, and then an A minus is lower than A plus, right? And obviously, understanding those simple things is just simple, right? A report card, and that's what really this is. What you're looking at when we go over these things, we're looking at a report card. That's what we're looking at, report cards, to understand what's going on. So when we see stuff like this, we can understand by the report card. L3. Oh, that's the one they say is supposedly African, but yet we're seeing individuals that look Caucasian, right? How is that possible? Because their father would probably be most likely constantly Caucasian, but the mother would be of the stock of Israel. So it's very important to understand when we're looking at this, we got to look at it very carefully. We got to look at it carefully. And this also takes away a sense of ignorance, as in the sense of ignorance when people say, oh, you're black, you must be African. If you're white, you must be European. You see what I'm saying? Is that deep? Is absolutely deep. And this is just one example. Don't think that is the only. This is the only example out of the whole world. This is one example out of who knows how many examples this is. Um, Many people today may not know who they are, and yet, after getting checked, they may find out that they may be something totally different than what they may have thought they originally was. You may have seen great examples of that, like people who thought they were pure Europeans or whatever, and then they find out that they're actually uh, what they would call African, but that's not African. That's why they got to dig deeper on those things. Now, the A and B haplogroups, those are native to Africa. We got quotes about that, about them being native to Africa. But the E lineage is not, because fossils of E lineage are not found in Africa. That's very important to understand. Now, the only place you'll find them is in Egypt. Why? Egypt, or along the Nile all the way to like the Horn of Africa. We know because the mixing that had happened with the Egyptians and the Israelites. Very important to understand. You can look up Genesis all you want. Israel came from the lands called Africa and the Middle East. That's important. All throughout the whole book, we got Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob being in the land of Canaan in the Levant until Joseph is sold into Egypt. What happens when Joseph is sold into Egypt? They end up dwelling in Egypt for a long time, about 200 years. They end up dwelling there, going to captivity in Egypt, in Africa, right? Not in the north. That's very important. So if we find ancient genetics of any lineage, any single lineage in the north, they're disqualified, automatically disqualified from being Israel, right? That's very important. If we find any ancient genetics of that subclad being in the upper north, they cannot be Israel. That's very important because Israel was small, and it went, and we can follow their history throughout all of history, that they went into Africa for a long time and they were called out of Africa. In fact, that's what it's talked about in Amos, a prophecy that says, "Did not I call Israel out of Egypt?" Right? That's very important. So that's why there's a lot of shocking things, like for example, when you type down, right, Ashkenaz Jew, right? If you type down Ashkenaz Jew, right, what's something that stands out? They know that their haplogroups and their genetic types are actually going to be European, right? We talked about that before. We talked about how that was one of those big shocking things, right? How they talked about basically right here, Ashkenaz in Hebrew refers to Germany. Obviously, it doesn't. This is on levels when understanding what actually the name Ashkenaz is. We just did a video yesterday on the real origins of Ashkenaz. Germany is not Ashkenaz. Germany is Germany. Germany is from the Germanic tribes, but this is an example of taking information carefully. And Ashkenaz Jews are those who originated in Eastern Europe. So you see how they say originated in Eastern Europe, because you can look at their haplogroupings. Every single haplogroup besides E, because they have 35% of E in them. That's absolutely a fact. That's why they're Shemitic. Some of them are Shemitic, some, the E haplogroup. But every single one of their haplogroups are found in Europe, every single one of them. So it's very important to understand when we're looking at those things carefully. We got to look at these things carefully. And why is that shocking if they're from Europe? Because it's never recorded Israel going to Europe early on. And we can find their genetics. I'm talking ancient genetics, right? Ancient genetics. For example, the Canaanites. I seen a brother basically say, uh, what if the E group is Canaanites? Well, you know what's interesting about that? I'm gonna show you something. Let's look up something real fast. And in fact, I'm gonna go to Wiki and I'm gonna show you something from Natural Geographics. I'm gonna show you something that's said on there. Let me go to, in fact, right here. This one's fine. All right, so this one, just let me see if it has the haplogrouping on here. I don't think it does. I'm gonna close this. I'm gonna go to Google and I'm gonna type it here. All right, so let me go to it. They make it nice and interesting to find. Let me actually, right here. This is very important because we had talked about this, how they came down into the Levant and everything. But let me show you something on here. Let me actually put it like this. Natural Geographic. Natural Geographic. All right, so right here. Now watch what it says right here. This is where it gets really interesting because you'll see a lot of people because the E group is found in the Levant. They'll try to say, "Oh, that's Canaanites. That got to be Canaanites." But we already know who the Canaanites are. We have genetics. We know for a fact who the Canaanites are. Is not something that we find mysterious. It's something that we can just read about. So let's read a little bit about it. Let's hear who are the Canaanites. Here's who the Canaanites are. Let's read a little about it. Let's go down. Let's go to. Let me make sure this is the one with Jericho. I'm just gonna read this one first. In fact, let's go to the one with Jericho. I'm gonna go to that one. Why? Why Jericho? Because Jericho, the first inhabitants of Jericho, you got to know who they are to know who's the Canaanites. Watch what they say right here. So they just talk about this 2004 and everything, and they just talk about obviously the Canaanites, right? Phoenicians, right? The Phoenicians, the Canaanites, right? So they had a debate, right? It says was whether haplogroup J2 should be identified as the Phoenicians, right? And whatnot, but they know for sure that they are because it says right here, consensus suggests that right here, it says basically right here, it says should be identified that the Phoenicians or its parent group M89 on the Y DNA tree, whatnot, and initial right here. Let's start here. All right. Census suggests that J2 be identified with the Canaanite Phoenician, right? North Levant population, right? They saying that J2, and we can look at the sources for those things. The reason why is because they found multiple and in the mummies and in the Phoenician mummies. That's very important. In the Phoenician mummies, they actually find J2 in the ancient DNA of the people, and it's recorded by Natural Geographic, right? In fact, what's interesting is the thing about Jericho. You may not have heard about this, but watch this. Wells identified the haplogroup of Canaanites as haplogroup J2, right? Isn't that what they try to say is the Kohen line? But watch how old it is, which originated from Anatolia and the Caucasus Mountains, from the Caucasus Mountains, right? Caucasian, the Natural Geographic, right? Whatever project, this genome project, and which was we had talked about, right? This was where was it Aaron Elhike was on, linked haplogroup J to the site of Jericho, 8,000 BC, 8,500 BC. The original inhabitants were actually what's interesting is when we think about Canaanites, obviously Canaanites are Hamites. So why is it a J group? Because Hamites are actually A and B. Because you got to know about what happened. A lot of movement was going on with Japheth. He came into a lot of lower areas. They end up taking a lot of areas, and they were settled in a lot of areas. So you'll see that J group down there in Jericho, 8,500 years ago. So before the E group got there into Jericho, and not Jericho, but around that area, the J group was there first as the Canaanites and indicated that the modern populations, J2 is found obviously nowadays, the modern populations today, we find J2 in the Middle East. How did they get there? What happened? How did these people forget who they are? So you see what's going on there? You can see a little bit here on the answer there that Jericho was actually filled with, you can see the source, go back up, right? It was filled with J groups, the Canaanites, and the mummies in Jericho, ancient times. See what's going on there? Ancient mummies, ancient Jericho. When it fell, those were the groups that were inside of it, J lineages. And remember, Jericho was one of those places that the Canaanites were at. I don't know why I keep clicking that. 31, right over here. Let's see if that thing is still up there. Yes. Sometimes, and when I seen this stuff, sometimes they had took these things down and whatnot. Like this one, it looks like they kind of moved and whatnot, but it's really not hard to find. You got way back machines and stuff like that where you can pull up the older files. So if I need to, I'll just do that. Archived copy. Here's an archived copy. I'm pretty sure that's the way back machine. They and you probably don't know, but they were trying to delete this information. If you've never seen this information, the reason why, because I got multiple videos of it, and them deleting the videos afterwards. The videos were deleted. Wayback Machine. Okay. This one, let's just type it down. So you see, so sometimes it's like that. You see this example, this is a wall. What just happened was a wall right there. We just ran into a wall. All right. So Wikipedia missing that piece of information. Let's dig and let's see how you have to find stuff if you ever run into a wall like that. Let's take this right here, because that's pretty straightforward right there, and that shouldn't be too hard to find. You got one right there, but I want to find a. I want to find. Here's some just talking about Canaanites and everything. Sometimes you have to use different search tools for these things. I want to find something more connected to it, because as you see, we can see that people knew about this, right? When they brought it out, but they tried to hide the information. Let's see if this will give me a hyperlink. Let's see if this will lead me to a hyperlink. So if you never heard about that, that's an example. That's one of those things that is information that you got to grab. You got to go find the information and you got to grab it. And once you grab it, you got to hold on to it. You get the truth, sell it not, right? Boom, boom, boom. Just seeing if it had that little a hyperlink on it. I don't know why this thing's in the way. Go up a little bit. I think this one does, but this thing is like in the way. Let me go up a little bit. All right, here. Okay. I gotta try to click it somehow. I gotta try to click it before that thing comes down. That's too bad. There's little things in the way. Let's see how we can move that. Isn't that something? Sometimes they do that. Make it all jumbled like that. In fact, let's see, what can we do? Maybe we can resize the screen. Let's try to resize it. There we go. So you can see, obviously, they had to put in the archive because they have moved the original and whatnot. But you can see it yourself, right? The information is one of those things. Let's see if we can find it like this. Do it ourselves. Let's see, let's see, let's see, let's see. I just wanted to see if that will work. Let's go over here. Obviously, it's one of those things that I can find if I sit there and look for a while, which is something I usually do. I could sit for a minute. It could take you like a day or an hour, depending on what it takes. Obviously, sell, that's not gonna go down, I'm pretty sure. But that's gonna be more talking about their origin. That one I already have a piece of quote. I have a quote from that. But this one, as you can see, this is super controversial, right? That's super controversial. That's something that is super rare that when you see it, you need to grab it. Because obviously, you know, you can see that that's going to be something. Why is that important? J lineage, the J lineage, because like they say, it's in present day so-called Jewish populations, 30%, right? They're not one people. They're mixed. They're mingled people. That's very important. It's just honesty. That's all that it is. It just takes honesty. So obviously, this is one of those things that it seems they had made it a little harder to find, but it's not impossible to find. It's definitely something we can find. Let me go to the Wikipedia one and just post that link from the Wiki post. But that's why I showed you that, because obviously this is just one piece of information. There's more. I have direct quotes about the J line. For example, let's look at a direct quote. Let's look at some quotes that I grabbed before they were able to delete about the J lineage. Let's go to right here. All right, so let's look at the ancient lands of Sidon. So in the ancient lands of Sidon, remember how I told you the A and B haplogroups are Hamites? Because Sidon has A and B haplogroups in it. Sidon has A and B haplogroups, a lot, 100 of them, a lot of A and B haplogroups. But they have way more. They have a lot of J groups as well in certain areas. So you can see a lot of the J groups, J1 and J2, in that area. So it's very interesting. And the connection of eyes. Eyes, remember I told you eyes, I, J, K, they're all connected. Those are also found in Sidon, ancient times, ancient times. So it's very important when we look at these things to go about it carefully, because, the truth may be that shocking where it may be rewrite some people's understandings of who peoples are. Let me actually click. This one is, someone must have grabbed this from Natural Geographic. They did well, right? They saw that and they copied it. They made sure they grabbed it and copied it, because obviously that's one of those things that's very important. Let's see if he has anything else on there. I'm just looking to see if he has that one. So right here, he just got it from here. I'm just going to copy the link from here from 31. So I find it really interesting when you could find certain things like that. Obviously, it was cited. The source was cited, and it was moved. It was moved. And that's what I talk about. I talk about how a lot of pieces of information can be moved. I know that's not one. Said oops real fast. Let's see. Let's go to 2005. And let's go to, these are snapshots. Obviously, it's one of those things that it would take a little longer. I'm probably not gonna do it like this, but I could find them, get the pictures from it. So that one's all blurred out, but sooner or later, checking all these different sources ones, it's gonna be found. The Genome Project, right? They got upset because obviously they didn't want to be called Canaanites, but the truth is the truth. That's why we have to understand when we look at these things, you got to go about it carefully. Go back over here. So I'm gonna look at one more, but this is something that now that I see that it's challenging, I love challenges. So I'm probably going to definitely grab this and put it on my note, piece together all the pieces and whatnot, and just show the original copy. because there's other Wayback Machines. This is one, but obviously there's 415 captures, so something on there might bear some fruit. Something on there might bear some fruit out of the 415 captures of time of it. Obviously, it has to be a younger one. I have to get a capture from one of the younger times. But the reason why I'm talking this is because see, this one had took the little imagery and everything. It's actually still loading. I'm gonna let it load to see if it'll load anything. But this is the type of stuff that I'm talking about. When you're digging these sources like this, see how it's not showing the image and everything or what was being said here. But you can see this was a post. This was a real post that they had. This was something that was going on, and it's without a doubt because we got what's his name, Aaron Elhak, who also talks about this, and that's what we did yesterday. We was talking about how he did a thing with Natural Geographic, and Natural Geographic took it down, and basically was trying to say that he was crazy, even though he had all the evidence. He had plenty of evidence to show that what he found was true. Right here, just redirecting. I'm pretty sure it's going to take me to the page with it not there. But obviously, I'm not going to look for it now. I just looked a little bit. And this is how it is when you're source digging. Source digging can, it may look like when you see all this stuff, you see this. This is not simple work. This is not just somebody just grabbing things, typing it down, grabbing the first thing they see. This is digging deep to the sources, reading the pages, understanding the translations of the, basically, like the book reports, right? Understanding what is the final results, understanding the book reports, right? You don't have to take the test or teach the test to understand the answer, right? That's very important. I'm just going to close this. I'll look for that another time. And that is interesting to me. So I'm going to grab that in a time when I get a chance. But if you have any questions at all on these things, definitely ask, because that's how we get information on these things. That's how we learn. All right. So the reason why we look at this is it's not because of racial superiority, but it's for truth. That's actually what it's for. It's for truth. It's for understanding truth and understanding what's going on. I think I closed one of these, but I don't know which one I closed. I'm just going to leave it. Just looking here. All right. It's going down here. Here's another one of Sidon. Let me see if I got it on this one. Yes. Right up here, where I talked about this before. I talked about how they found in Sidon JP58, which was supposedly a direct subclad of the high priest line, but finding that in Sidon is groundbreaking. In addition, the two Sidon BA, right? That's the Bronze Age. Sidon BA males carried the Y chromosome haplogroups JP58. Supposed to be, they say that's supposed to be Levi, and that's Levi. Where was Levi always? In the center of the camp. In the center of the camp, not in the outside of the camp, nor expanding anywhere, but they was always at the center of the camp. He already had, before they got out of Mount Sinai, the Levites had a law to be in the center of the camp. So for finding them in Sidon, which is way above Tyre, which is an area in the Phoenicians, which was not a place that was taken by Israel, is crazy in ancient times for them to even say that they're Israel. Both common male lineages, they say in the Near East today, right? It's a common thing. Haplogroup JP58 is frequent, and you can see Arabian Peninsula with proposed origins, obviously, real origins, in the Zagros Mountain and the Caucasus Mountains is where they really found. And go over. But I was talking about how none of the J lineage is native to the Levant. That's what this is basically saying. Is they're not native to the Natufian or the Neolithic Navat. That means they wasn't there. They wasn't there before. Rather, they was actually somewhere else. They came from somewhere else. And then I talked about their pigmentation, right? We talked about how their pigmentation is actually a darker skin pigmentation. That LC 45A2, LC 45A2. I think I missed the letter. Let me see. SLC 45A2. And I'm going to show you who you find them in. So here it is, SLC 45A2. It's not hard to know about this one because this one, as it says right there, it just talks about how it's commonly seen. Error occurred. Let's go over here. Right? It just talks about, yeah, I'll just find one. It's commonly found, here's one, right? SLC 45A2. I'm just going to close these. So SLC 45A2, this is actually found in the ones in Sidon who have the J haplogroup. Remember, they were trying to say they're like the Lebanese, right? That's why it says Sidon, probably Sidon BA, Sidon Bronze Age, probably having darker skin than Lebanese today from variants in SLC 45A2. So here we go. I'll get a little bit about SLC 45A2, right? We're going to go to, let's look for where that's said directly. Okay, so right here, so scientists have found three regions: SLC 24A5, SLC 45A2, and OCA2 in the genes of African Americans with strong links to skin color, obviously, in those things and whatnot. And then it just talks about the areas and whatnot right here. It says this one, genetic variant. It says which is near a region in the gene called SLC 24A5, showed the strongest association with skin pigmentation and vitamin D deficiency, right? So SLC 45A2, also important to note, this one has a table 2. Just going to show you real fast on this link. If we just look at this link, we can actually note something very interesting. Just talks about the ones and whatnot. They found 5 Canaanites, right, from the ancient Canaanites and whatnot, and just talks about their haplogroup, right, P58, and then also this one, J1 and J2, both of them, J1 and J2 up there, both of them. Go down a little bit because it's just a subclad. There's nothing too different about them. But let me find figure 2. It's figure 3. I'm sure it wouldn't be so far from figure 3. I did not know that was going to actually open. Let me close that. I'm looking for figure 2. Figure 4, I'm pretty sure is up here then. Let's go to figure 2, 2A, 2B. I'm sure it's not 2A or 2B, but it's actually going to be in table 2, table 2. Oh, table. Wait a second. Let me see something. Make sure table S2. We gotta get Pacific. Let me just make double one more time. Okay. Pigmentation table S2. S2. All right. Here's the skin variations. S2 right here. All right. Let's talk about that. I don't know why it just opened it up again as let me see if I can just find it on this. Okay. So here, a little bit. And let's just put So there is a little bit. So SLC 45A2 just talks about pigmentation right there. So you can see that's going to be connected to their pigmentation. And then they also note, obviously, that I'm giving a direct answer there. Let us know that that's causing them to have darker skin pigmentation. Just looking here to see anything. So obviously, looking up the dead souls and whatnot, they can see their pigmentation. Now, obviously, you can put that and look at that and know that that's one of those genes in the skin tone of African Americans. Now, obviously, most African Americans are E1B1A or E1B1B or in that likeness of E or A or B. What we're looking at is the J line. Though they're darker skin, right? Though they would be darker skin, as they say, right? Resulting in darker pigmentation, right? Though they're darker skin, their haplogroup is J. That's one of those things that I'm talking about. So that's why it's really interesting. Though these ones are lighter skin, their haplogroup is L3, right? I'm sure we look for a one and find someone E1B1A who's lighter skin too, and those things. So that's why when we're looking at these things, we have to be careful, tread carefully and understand that the things are very deep and very easy to understand if we understand the answers, if we can look at the answers, right? What we need to also know is that though we find, in the Levant, the E1B1B lineage, right? Though we find that and E1B1A also in the Levant, um, we also have to note that these ones that are in the Levant are not Canaanites. That's important to understand. They're not Canaanites. The reason why is because also their movement shows that they're not Canaanites. They're the places where they go, the movements the places where they're found in certain time frames and stuff like that. We know they're not Canaanites. We know that for a fact, based upon where they're found and where they are. They're actually Shemites, right? They're actually Shemites. Remember, Abraham came from idol worshippers, right? It's very important to understand. And yet we find them in certain locations. But the places where you will expect to find Canaanites, we find J2. That's what we find. So it's one of those things that's important to know the facts on those things. Let's see. Shalom, family. Shalom, shalom. So shalom. I wanted to answer, some questions today on just those things, why we're doing this, right? Why are we looking at these deeper things? Why are we looking at genetics? Because let me tell you something real fast. Do you know how much of the Bible has opened up to me ever since I started learning genetics? The Bible, right? There's a scripture that says the Philistines came from Captor. And then obviously finding the evidence of the Philistines coming from the area of Crete, which is Captor, and coming downwards into the southern Levant, northern Levant, into where you see the Phoenicians and everything. That's a great thing to take note on. That's a great thing to take note on because that also opens up an understanding in the scriptures. It opens up an understanding of scriptures, that the scriptures knew that the Philistines came from the north. That's important. The Philistines, the Canaanites, the ones who took over the land, landed in Canaan and called themselves after the lands, those ones were actually Japhethite from the north. So that's why we're looking at these things, because it's that deep. It opens up the Bible. That's what these things do. They open up the Bible and they give us understanding for these things. They give us understanding for what's really going on in the lands, right? So, and that's why we're looking at these things. We're looking at these things not for racial superiority, but for truth, right? If someone says that they're Israel, yet we can find Israel, the evidence of it, then we got to consider, who's telling the truth and who's lying, and the world that we live in is full of lies. Yeah, we can find truth, but we got to hold to that truth as close as we can. So, as you see, this is just one of those examples that I was talking about, how the J lineage is actually known as Canaanites. The E lineage is not a Canaanite. That's important to understand. The E lineage is not Canaanites because we know who the Canaanites are. That's important to understand. The Canaanites, the original Canaanites, we can find their genetics too, A, and B. We can find the original A and B lineages in the Canaanites, right? We had talked about that, the original A and B that we find in Sidon, right? All the A's and B's and everything. But what else we find? J, right? We find J there. And that's what we got to think about the complexity there. Obviously, there's more groups, I, J, there's R's. Got another quote with the R's that came down, but those came a little lower. They came all the way to the Philistines, but they were all the confederation. The Sea Peoples, that's what they were called, the Sea Peoples. The Sea Peoples, if you don't know about the Sea Peoples, just look it up on YouTube, Sea Peoples, and or the Sea Peoples, the Philistines. And they came down all the way to Egypt. You can find them all the way to Egypt, but they got turned back by Ramses. Ramses turned them back, and they basically went back to settle in the area of Sidon and the Philistines. And that's why we're looking at it, because it's that interesting. Because once you understand these letters, if you don't understand the letters, just ask. I can tell you. I can take you to the I can take you to the source. I can take you to the root of every single haplogroup. Every single one of these haplogroups, I just sit there. I've been studying them and looking at them because they're interesting. I think it's really interesting to see these type of things and know its root. For example, the E lineage is native to the Levant. You don't find an older lineage of E outside of the Levant. In fact, I'll read you a quote here that said about the E lineage right here. Obviously, this is going to be basal E1B1B, but I'm going to show you what it says about the oldest one, right? Just tells us about the oldest one, the world's oldest one. It just talks about they were found in Natufian. The oldest place you can find the E lineage is in the people who they named Natufian, right? The Natufian are the ones who spread the Afro-Asiatic language. What is Afro-Asiatic? What is the Afro-Asiatic language? Let's look that up real fast. Afro-Asiatic is a language that for some reason a lot of people in the Middle East and in parts of Africa speak, right? In fact, here's a saying right here. You can see Afro-Asiatic. You can see it's about 300 languages that are spoken predominantly in the Middle East, North Africa, the Horn of Africa, and parts of Sahel. Let's go over here real fast. So obviously, this is one of those things that we have to understand what's going on. Why are these things like this, right? The real Arabs actually dwell up here. This is actually where the real Arabs dwell, right? It's actually very important also to know that though the people speak Afro-Asiatic language, we also got to know who they are. For example, each one of these, we can know who they are. The Omic, E1B1AC, a twin of E1B1A1. E1B1A2, which is the Omic people. They are actually, in the sense right here, they're actually going to be related to Esau. The reason why is because Esau mixed with, obviously we know he mixed with Ishmael. He also mixed with Hittites. He mixed with Hivites. He mixed with Canaanites. That's very important to understand. He mixed with all those. He mixed with Hivites, Hittites, and Canaanites, and Ishmael. Very important to know that. And then obviously you got your Cushi, or they say your obviously your Hamites, or your how they say Ethiopian. Now, obviously they were speaking to the Hebrews, so they would have a Shemitic language. Afro-Asiatic is a Shemitic language. In fact, that's where you get your Shemites. Shemitic language is an Afro-Asiatic language. You see what I'm saying here? Afro-Asiatic language is Shemitic. You see what I'm saying there? The E1B1B is actually in the movement of it. As it says right here, it just lets us know E1B1B lineages are closely linked to the diffusion of Afro-Asiatic languages. In fact, during the movement of the Moors into Sicily, you can see right here, in either case, it is likely that M81, which is of E1B1B, came into the basically the area, the upper area to Spain, whatnot, during the Moorish period, right? Obviously, when the Arabs conquered most of what is now Spain and Portugal, all right, where they remained for over 700 years, right? The Moors also conquered Sicily, right? Moors, right? The Arabs, these are the Arabs, E1B1B. E1B1B are the real Arabs found in the Middle East, right? You can find it in a Natufian homeland. Let's look at the Afro-Asiatic spread. You see what the Afro-Asiatic spread is? You see how it's right here and here? You see how the Arabs are right here, the Arabian area right there? Let me show you something. Let's look at the Natufian. They call them Natufian, but they're just They're just what's the word I'm looking for? They're Shemites. That's what they are. They're Shemites. They're the original Shemites, and it's without a doubt. I would love for someone to tell me no, because that's when we can have a conversation on these things deeply. Let's look right here. You see this right here? What the genetics say? The Tufian homeland. What did we just see about the? What did we just see about the Afro-Asiatic language? We just seen that the Afro-Asiatic language has to do with the upper areas of Africa and in this area here. Do you know that that's actually one of the most areas that's also circumcised? Here's a little bit right here. Here's an Natufian. They're in Saudi Arabia and they're in this upper area. Well, it just so happens that that's also the spread of linguistics of the Shemitic language. You see what's going on there? So that's why I say when you think these things have no potential for being Israel, you probably want to look at the linguistics. You probably want to look at what's really going on behind the scenes, and then you'll get a more clear picture of these things. There's also, you know who the Chadic people are? They're the original. They're the original. The ones the R1B. If you know, R1B was the original Egyptians. The original Egyptians had R1B, but they're black, but they're dark skinned. They're darker skinned, the Chadic people, and they also have an Afro-Asiatic language. Why? Because guess what? Guess who all spoke Shemitic? Let's go to. Let me go to a thing if I could find it right here. All right, so look at this. This is the Afro-Asia. This is Shemitic script. Egyptians, Canaanites, Hebrews, all and Arabians obviously spoke the Afro-Asiatic language. Later on, the Greeks start picking up that script. That's why it's easy to translate. It's not hard to translate Hebrew to Greece and then Greek to English. That's why it's not hard to translate that, because the Greeks picked up the text of the Shemitic script. So you actually would have the Egyptians, the Canaanites, and the Hebrews, and obviously the Arabics, the Arabs, speaking a Shemitic language. So look at the spread of the Shemitic language and the spread of the genetics, right? You can see the Chadic people, right, in Africa that had got kicked out of the main power of Egypt. They were kicked out of the main power of Egypt, and the power was transferred over during the reign of Ramses, who was under a quote unquote unroyal line. E1B1B. Now you'll probably see that they'll say Ramses was E1B1A. That's actually a gross, what's the word I'm looking for? A hyper mutation, which you yourself, you can look it up yourself. Ramses is not E1B1B, E1B1A. In fact, I'm just going to show you real fast. If you've seen this before, you gotta dig closer, because I got multiple geneticists, multiple. Um, we even got Dr. Nathan, who agrees with the same thing. But let me show you something. E1B1A. Let me see if I can find it. I put Rams. All right, let me see if I can find that one real fast. Let's see. I just want to show you someone and then a geneticist comment on it. Let me see if I can find it. All right, I'm gonna actually grab it from a note. This is why you always gotta never take things face value. Always dig deeper. Always dig deeper. Always dig deeper. Because that's where people run into accidents. Let's see if I can find that one. No, it's not this one. It's actually going to be. Now, obviously, one of the biggest things, if you're not familiar with the stuff, it may seem overwhelming, but cleave close, because this is something that I have a passion in. The reason why is because I have a passion in truth. And I believe that this is something that is super passionate, because it's not just leaning on pigmentation, right? If we don't know this stuff, you know what we're leaning on? Pigmentation. And I think that's pathetic. I think that's absolutely pathetic to lean on pigmentation only. So I'm going to show you something real fast. So this video right here, if you've never seen it, it's really interesting. It says, was Ramses the third E1B1A or E1B1B? He's the E1B1A. No, he's E1B1B. How do we know? You see this person also right here? This person, obviously, if you get a little history, a little bit behind them, they look at a lot of genetics pretty much. I don't know why he don't have no history about him here, but he studies on these things. Let me show you how we know. See how you can put a heart there? This person who did this little thing, right? He's talking about the test and everything and how they found out what he is. They did right here. They said the predictor resulting in Ramses the third, son of haplogroup belonging to E1B1B. Is that right? Or is he guessing? Is this person guessing or is he actually testing stuff? He's right. This person, even right here, says, good job. STRs remain. Basically, you can see a little bit what he's saying, but not. I'm not going to read everything. He just talks about him. Hi, Mo. Nice to see you on YouTube, right? You might not recognize me, but I remember you from North Africa group where that pretty stewardless manager managed the group and whatnot and everything. And they just talk about a little bit of stuff, and you can find out, who these people are, what's going on by their conversation. And then you can go to their Facebook page and find out what's going on here. Like what's actually been what's going on and these things. And what basically they're talking about is that what you're seeing here is correct. And that's what Dr. Jensen was talking about. He was talking about this as well in this. So this is a bunch of different quotes. I'm not going to play it right now, but there's a bunch of different pieces to play as well from this that talks about these things. So you can see when we're looking at these things, it's important to know how deep it goes, right? Now, obviously, this was one of those examples of when this was really early on, when they was first doing ancient genetics. And a lot of the hypermutations, even their sons, and that's why they thought it was solidified, because they also got the same results with their sons. Well, of course, because they didn't have a lot of the, like, for example, some of the things that they needed to understand it at that time, they didn't have. Long story short. I don't want to make it too complex and explain it too much, but there's a couple different ones, multiple different places that found the same result. E1B1B V88. That's who reigned in Ramses in the land of the land of Egypt. That's very important to understand. That's who was actually there reigning in that area. Because if you look it up, you might find some errors. But you got multiple different geneticists that will tell you otherwise. Like Dr. Jensen, right? He'll tell you that as well on those things and whatnot. Like right here, 218. There's another place where Jensen talks. In fact, there's a great chance to test the sound to see how the sound is on this. Let me see if I can not this part, but 14. Let me see if I can find it right here. All right, let me see if I can hear it. Let me see if I can find it right here. Let me just mute to see how it sounds. All right, so that's really interesting how using these headphones, I can't hear the sound, which is unfortunate. That's really sad to see that I can't play the sound from this thing. Let me try it again. Let me try it again. and try to share the sound one more time.
Something we can eventually glean from it, but right now the sequences that we have that have been published do not match up with what we know from history. It seems like either the DNA is degraded or they underwent some sort of hypermutation. The fact that it's seen consistently, not only in the...
All right, so let's go back a little bit.
Controversy about whether or not there were people there before them. Hopefully we'll have some more of those answers by the time the book comes out.
Okay, well, this one at 8:10 p.m., haplogroup E-B38/E-M2 was found among Ramses III of New Kingdom, Egypt. Can you discuss this? It is also the same haplogroup of Niger, Congo, and Bantu people. I'm glad I'm not answering that question.
The short and boring answer is the DNA from people who've died, Ramses, pharaohs, so forth, it appears to be unreliable in its quality, in its implications. There may be something we can eventually glean from it, but right now the sequences that we have that have been published do not match up with what we know from history. It seems like either the DNA is degraded or they underwent some sort of hypermutation. The fact that it's seen consistently, not only in Neanderthals, but stuff that's more recent, tells me this is probably DNA degradation.
So you got to look at these things carefully. DNA degradation, basically, that's the same thing that everyone else was getting. That's the same thing. Multiple geneticists all agree that that report, when it first came out of E1B1A of Ramses, was wrong, was absolutely wrong. It's actually E1B1B, V28, and also historically, it was filled with areas with people with E1B1B. That's very important when looking at that piece of information. So dig deep when you look at these things, but always cleave close, because I'm telling you, what I'm showing you, I have a zeal in it, but understand there's logic behind what we're showing, because they're trying to hide the truth. But once you see all these things together at once, I guarantee you, if you take your time and look at these things at once, even the spread of the linguistic language of the Shemitic language, right? And the people who are actually closely linked, which are the Egyptians right here. These are actually the original Egyptians, the E1B1B lineage. Also the Egyptians, right? And then you have the Shemitic language, right? You got the Shemitic language and everything. And then you got the Omic people. How did the Omics start speaking the Shemitic language, close to the Shemitic Afro-Asiatic family? Because they're Esau. They're E1B1C, the twin of E1B1A. And then obviously you got your Berbers and stuff like that, Berbers and all those things and whatnot. Those are going to be still, when you look at their haplogroupings, you're going to see a lot of E1B1B. So a lot of these are E lineages, and then the R lineage of the Egyptian line that had kicked out of Egypt after Ramses had got into power, who was actually of a different haplogroup. So is that interesting? That's how interesting this stuff is when looking at. So you can see it. So the reason why I wanted to talk about this today is because there's no doubt that Israel is of the E lineage. There's no doubt of it. That's a fact. But I do ask anyone who wants to challenge the doctrine of this to, if they know about haplogrouping, we can have a conversation. Like let's say, for example, they say J is Israel, right? Let's put the facts on the table and see where J actually originates from. Does J have any potential to be Israel? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. In fact, I have multiple quotes. And for example, you see this right here. This is a site very important to see. This one and another one called Indo-European. That pretty much, they go deep into the roots of almost every single haplogroup, and they can show you where they actually came from, their origins, where you can find them and everything, who they are throughout history, who they're related to. Because there's a lot of genetic studies that's going on nowadays. We're finding a lot of ancient peoples and everything on these things and whatnot. So we can look at these things and find out what's going on. For example, I think this is the one that talks about Greece. Right here. This was not the one. Let's go down a little bit. Down. This one too just talks about, where they came from. Because the Neolithic Greece, That's where the J group is highly at, the J group. So I'm not going to go over it right now and everything, because obviously this is one source off of many other sources that we can use to find out the root, because we always want to look for the oldest, right? The oldest known J2 samples at present, right, were identified in the remains from the Hatu cave in northern Iran, right? Just talks about that, where we find it. And then you get from there, it goes on and moves to different areas, right? It just talks about how it's right here. This confirms that the haplogroup J was already found around the Caucasus and northern Caspian region during the Mesolithic period. What time frame is that? Well, it actually got it right there, right? The first appearance of J2 during the Neolithic came in the form of a 10,000 year old, right? How old is a Natufian? 10,000 year old samples from such and such and such and such. So if they say that this is Israel, and the Natufian was in Israel at this time, yet they were in the Caucasus at this time, what makes them more likely to be Israel than Israel being the E lineage? You see what I'm saying? Now that's why we got to look at these things carefully and more detailedly, because you might find some interesting things that you may have not had thought at first. So that's why we look at these things. I don't want anyone to think that we are abandoning the gospel. This is the gospel. Understand that the life is in the blood. But this is an example of the exposure that's coming out for people saying that they're such and such and such and such, and people like, I'll take the challenge. You say that you're Israel, let's see if you are Israel. And people are going to do that. They're going to look at these things more carefully. In fact, there's a channel. I'm going to leave it like this because I actually got to take off real fast. There's a channel called, actually, they're not Ancient Origins. They're his channel was called something else. In fact, I think it's right. It's on here. There's another channel. Let me see if I can find it. They're going to do something really interesting. Here it is. Study of, right here, of antiquities in the Middle Ages. This person, if you want to see a really interesting study, I'm thinking it's going to be unbiased, because this individual, he brought out some stuff of the Philistines and stuff that was unbiased, and he's going to bring out information that we already went over. He's going to talk about the Scythian origin. He's going to talk about the Khazars origin, right? Cheddar Man, the dark-skinned person, and then one of these. But the interesting one is also this one, the Samaritan origin, the Scythian origin, the Khazar origin, and the Samaritan origin. We can't just say, oh, these people, we can't find their genetics. Actually, we can. Actually, we can find their genetics. So if you want to dig a little more into these things, be on the lookout with this channel, because he said that he already has them recorded. He says he just recorded an entire series with him, right? So he's going to come out with some very interesting stuff. So it's going to be very, very interesting what he brings out. Obviously, we're going to talk about it when it does come out too. So y'all willing, we continue in the holy conversation, and never forget the major things. Obviously, we have a place where we have our prophecies, but now we're touching on the information in genetics, right? Grabbing the report cards, understanding the report cards. So as always, you can understand genetics. You just got to be persistent on it, right? You got all types of people that can tell you all types of components of computer devices, but they never built a computer in their day, but they can tell you all about a computer. When I say built a computer, never put together the zeros and ones and stuff like that, and all the program. They never programmed and all that stuff and whatnot. And building a computer, it's like building, with Legos in a way. Most computers nowadays, you can build your own computer. It's like Legos, as long as you know what component connects to what component, because you can't just buy a bunch of, and if someone's familiar with computers, what's something that that you can't do with computers? You cannot take all types of random components and just mash them together into a super box, right? You can't take a motherboard from for this type of model and connect a type of thing that's supposed to be for this type of model. I'm not gonna get too much into it, but you know what I'm saying. You have to understand what you're dealing with, right? You got to know what type of motherboard is going to work with this type of thing, with this type of CPU, right? You got to have this type of motherboard for this type of CPU and this type of thing for this type of thing, right? You can't just take any type of, you can't say, oh, I like how this motherboard looks, so I'm going to take this motherboard and connect this motherboard to this CPU, and then such and such and such and such. You know, you can't do that. You know, you got to make sure it all is going to match. Same thing in genetics. It's the same thing in genetics. As long as you know the letters, you can know those things. And if you know the biblical narrative, even more better, because the biblical narrative is the only truth. The only truth. And the out of Africa idea is false, extremely false. And that's what I was just showing you today when pulling up that note of the out of Africa. That was just one. I think I closed it, but that was just one quote when I showed you on the out of Africa. Out of all the quotes, that out of Africa is false. Right? It's clear. Millions of billions of years false. The out of Africa idea is false. It's one of those things that's scientifically inaccurate. So that's what I just want to talk about today. The reason why we're looking at these things is because it unlocks the book. And it really brings understanding to some deeper things that at first it may not seem like it makes sense, but believe it or not, but the world is full of lies and the truth is actually there. The truth is findable. It's findable. That's what I'm saying. If we couldn't find it, I'll just say the world's full of lies. We can't find the truth. But upon testing and trying to find the truth, it's findable. The truth is actually findable. So that's why I'm showing you with these things. And also, I also want brothers to not just text, but join me live and let's have a holy conversation on these things, because I'm also working on what's the word I'm looking for? I'm working on wording things right, working on my words and working on patience and stuff like that. Because I know after, seeing a lot of things, I can have some impatience. That's why I'm working on humility. By the grace of Yah, I do believe in bringing charity to the brothers and sisters in Christ. I do believe that the Messiah is the way. And I do believe that we should teach the gospel first. But I do believe in rebuking lies. I highly do believe it. And obviously, you got to be educated to do it. You got to be educated. I'm no longer drinking milk. I'm eating meat. And I'm able to also feed those who need milk. So that's one of those things, and give meat. So that's what this is. That's what this is. It's actually looking at these things more in depth and more in tune onto these things. If you don't know about these groups, we can sit and we can understand these things. We can understand them because I actually start doing this. What was it? I'm in the medical field, so I caught on fairly quick. I don't know how it is with someone else, how fast they can catch on, but I just recently started getting into it. But it's not that hard because all you're doing is understanding, just like a book report. Well, not book report. Your report at the end of the year, right? Your grades. Just like your grades. That's all that it is. It's basically looking at grades. If you look at it like that, it's super easy. A and B is Hem, right? A and B is Hem. D and E, which is with C, because CT makes basically both of these, but D and E is Shem. And then your C, that makes your C and T, which makes all these, like your F and K and stuff, all of these are Japhetic. The same thing with the female line, but the female's line is more complex. I couldn't tell you who's Ham, Shem, and Japheth because there is no Ham, Shem, and Japheth with the women. Only that they're underneath Ham, Shem, or Japheth. That's all that we see. But the woman's line, that's why I say that's one of the ones that's more complex, but we can break it down. I guess the best way to understand it, that this is Shem and Ham. You have some Shemites here and some Hamites here. When I say Shemites, there's some Shemites that, like E1B1B, got with some people that have some of these groups, like under N, there's J and stuff, and U. Some of the people of E1B1B also have some of these lineages. And then these are, also some lineages as well. The mtDNA is a little more complex. I'm not going to just say which one's Ham, Shem, and Japheth because that would sound ridiculous, because there's no Ham, Shem, and Japheth in women. And a lot of times they would mix with the women, but you can find out who's Ham, Shem, and Japheth by the male's line, because the biblical narrative is structured on the male's lines. Even to the time of Messiah, we see the illustration all the way through. But remember, Messiah came from Mary, though his haplogroup is actually none. He don't have it. When I say none, he doesn't have a Y chromosome. He's of God, right? He's of the Spirit. So that's why people are blessed when they take in Messiah, because they're not becoming flesh. That's why I always tell people, don't be offended if you're R1, right? Don't be offended, right? If I say that you're Scythian, then you're Scythian, right? That doesn't mean that you're nothing who can't be saved, right? I don't believe in the camp doctrine. I think the camp doctrine is ridiculous. You can go to our channel, Flawless Breeze. I got two or three videos where I rebuked Sakari live. And that's one of those things that's still evident to this day where we got that. And we can show you how they were completely wrong in what they were saying. But that's an example of being careful on studying these things, because you got to get deeper if you want to challenge deeper topics. But this is now something else that is going to, if someone knows about this, they can destroy any camp doctrine of the 12 tribes chart, or they can destroy any doctrine of who is who, because there's a lot of false narratives going on that's just say Africa is Africa, Europe is Europe, and supposedly there's never been a migration in the land of the Levant, and the people in the Levant always been there. But no, we got to follow who are the Seljuk Turks, how they get there, the Arabs, the conquering of the Arabs that rised up in that area. So all those things have to be taken into consideration when looking at these things. The history, the linguistics, yes, the study of language, the geographics, the location of where these people are, where it's recorded in history also, and obviously the genetics, the linguistics, and the history. When looking at those things, obviously you're going to get a clear picture when you put all those things together. So just to give a talk today on why we're doing these things and how we can know these things, it's because we ourselves, if we want to focus on anything today, if you set your heart to it and dig deep enough, you can start to learn enough where you can understand these things. The good thing is that to understand haplogrouping, we just have to know haplogrouping. We don't have to learn how to dissect someone and break down the very codes in them, but we just have to know the answer. That's all we have to do. And that's how we can understand genetics, by understanding just like a report card. So if anyone has any questions, let me know. That walls are standing against my soul and I can't break the fields down. Amen. Yes, family, stay near, stay close, and stay strong. You got to keep on strengthening yourself in the truth. Keep on strengthening yourself in the truth. And let me know, how do I sound right now? Because I'm using a different mic and headphones. So I don't know how it sounds, if it sounds better, if it sounds worse, just let me know. But obviously, when I said yesterday was our last Synthetic Sunday, it might be our last Synthetic Sunday for a minute. I'm going to obviously put together some other stuff because there's still more to talk on with the genetics and everything. But I think it's important we also still keep on growing in the word of God, in the gospel, in the scriptures. I think it's important that we build in those things. But we have to also know that now we are advancing. This channel is advancing. We're becoming more in tune with the history, with the genetics, with the linguistics. We're not just speaking about the Bible. We don't just have the book in front of us and we're babes just spreading stuff, but we're adults in the word. We're able to give the stuff that's true. So and let's all come together in these things. Remember to come together in these things and bring shalom. Not just say shalom, but bring the peace. Bring the peace together so we can talk about these things. So I just wanted to remind the brothers today, what we're touching on is absolutely valid. Absolutely valid. But if someone doesn't agree, they can always come and have a holy conversation on these things. But I don't like when brothers, when they are Wikipedia warriors. Don't do this. Don't come to the channel. If you ever see someone do this, I'm gonna be one of those people that I'm gonna have to let them know we're gonna go live. Because if they don't believe any of this stuff and they grab a bunch of Wikipedia posts and they post in Wikipedia, then I'm gonna let them know that we need to have a holy conversation live. Because, for example, P2, where is P2 found anciently? In the Levant. But look what it says right here. P2, also known as E1B or E1B1, is a human Y chromosome, whatnot, and everything. It says this subclad had an ancient presence in the Middle East. You see what it says there? And is now, right? Basically says mostly in Africa, right? Where is believed to originate. It says it's believed to originate, right? But it says it has an ancient presence in the Middle East. Which one is right? Is it the fact that they believe based upon skin tone that they originated in Africa because that's where they are now? Or is it on the fact that they have an ancient presence with fossils in the Middle East? Which one's right? Which one we're going to actually pull up? Which source can we grab? We can grab the fact that they're in the Natufian, right? Because that's where they're found. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all the way to that time until they went to the land of Egypt. But E1B1 is actually going to be related to Abraham and his descendants and his family. When I say descendants, his family, because remember, he has a family line, a family tree. So always take note that when we're doing these things, we're not just grabbing Wicca posts. We're not just grabbing random posts. We're digging deep into these things. So be careful with that idea. Be careful with those ideas. So as always, family, even in the sense of this, you can see in the Middle East and in Europe, because I'm not going to get on it, but it's interesting. That's why we look at these things closer. Be careful on those things. Don't just grab Wicca posts or don't just run with what someone say. Look at the actual information word for word, the actual real studies, right? So that's why I wanted to talk about this. So I just want to talk about this because I just want to have a holy conversation on these things. So with that, family, I hope to have more holy conversations so that we can strengthen brothers and sisters in these things. Please help the brothers and sisters. And as always, on our page, you'll see in the About Me area a holy conversation. I want to get more in depth in conversations with brothers and sisters. So if you want to have a holy conversation on those things, join us on Discord so we can have that conversation on those things. Otherwise, live. Don't be ashamed. Be bold. Be bold as a lion in these things. Be bold. Right? If you don't know that much, if you know a little bit of scripture, that's okay. It don't matter how much you know. I'm not gonna boast my authority of scripture and all that stuff on you. Rather, I'm gonna bring you up as a brother should. A brother should put himself, even if he knows more than you, put himself under you and bring you up. That's how it should be, as Christ, right? He is wiser than all of us, but he didn't put himself over us. He put himself under us, and he himself died for us. So he's the greatest example that we have, period. And if someone doesn't believe in Christ or believe in the Messiah and have nothing to do, I have nothing to do with them. I'm be honest with you. I have nothing to do with anyone who denies the Messiah. There's a heathen to me. But I will 100% for a brother and sister that believes, bring them up. I will bring them up in the word and the truth and in the deep history and linguistics of these things. So, but I just wanted to have this day to talk about these things. As you can see, we have beloved brothers and sisters who care about others, who are in the sense of the adoption, but they are in the sense also mine. When I say mine, in the sense as they are going to be, as in a sense, Israel. And I know it because the way that they are. So, and no, when I say this, they're not just bloodline Israel, but they're spiritually Israel. Yes, there's a spiritual Israel. How do we know? By the adoption. We don't take in the camp doctrine because they got all types of false ideas and false camp illustrations, right? But let's be honest. Anyone can be saved if they believe, turn, baptize, and receive the gospel by faith. But if someone's running around boasting in the flesh, saying that they're Israel, we're going to break down those things. So that's what we've been doing lately. And the reason why also we've been doing this more is because me individually, I'm really upset that they kicked out some people out of Israel. If you know about that, you probably know about the quote unquote, they say black Hebrews that they basically kicked out of Israel. Another expulsion in this time, and the time is at hand, and yet they want to do another expulsion of the Jews, the real Jews. This is a very sad time. It's a very sad time. So that's why I'm bringing these things out, because I care about the fact that we have brothers and sisters that need our support in truth. That's what we need to do, is keep on bringing the truth. My heart's desire is that Israel gathers together and pray to the Lord so that he restores the land and restores his people. That's my heart desire. And that people of all types of haplogroups. I want people of R haplogroups, people of I haplogroups, people of J haplogroups. I want you all. I want every single person to come to truth and finally admit and say, you know what? Let us actually say that Israel had went into captivity into all the nations and fallen by the edge of the sword, and Jerusalem is trampled down by the Gentiles. That's what I want them to say, the prophecy of Messiah in Luke. So with that, family, connect to the truth, and we're going to constantly bring these things out oftentimes. And I'm always going to keep watch. If you're speaking, we're going to comment on it. I'll talk on it, because I do believe that the holy conversation brings the truth and perfection to life. So with that, family, never forget our roots, never forget our sources, never forget the information that we bring out, because what we're doing, even though it may seem like what's the word I'm looking for? Like we're always about controversy. We're not all about controversy, but truth is controversial. Was not Christ controversial when he had thousands and thousands with him, and then thousands left him, and he said, "Did not I choose you 12?" Right? So sometimes it's like that. I have no problem at all having 5 people, 4 people, one person. I have no problem with talking to a few people at a time. I have no problem with it, because this is how we know that we're doing the work, because we're going to be despised for the truth. But never, ever run away just because you're despised for the truth, right? The scriptures talk about that. It talks about when a time comes, when persecution happens, some flee from it. The weak, right? The weak flee, or the fearful, right? They flee when no one's after them, but the bold are as lions. So that's who we are, Lion Farm. It's the strength in the scriptures, understanding history, understanding linguistics, understanding locations, understanding genetics, but the scripture is our authority, period. So with that, family, I just wanted to say shalom, shalom. May you have a blessed day today and understand what we're doing. There's a reason to the madness. There's a reason. So with that, be blessed, be beloved, and amen.